My name is Patrick Beamer, and I'm a doctoral student in the Educational Psychology and Educational Technology program at Michigan State University. And I'm here today with Dr. Akane Zusho. Dr. Zusho is an associate professor of educational psychology in the Graduate School of Education at Fordham University. So I want to first thank you for joining me today.
Oh, no, thank you. I'm happy to be here, and I'm kind of honored.
Awesome. Well, we'll dive right in. My first question is, how do sociocultural factors influence student motivation and engagement?
So that's a really important question, a big question, and a somewhat difficult question, I think, for me to answer, in large part because I don't think our research community necessarily agrees on a definition when we talk about sociocultural factors, let alone how to actually operationalize them in studies of motivation. Our research community they definitely agree on the fact that those things matter for the most part. And I'm also seeing a shift in terms of the research toward contextualization. I mean, in terms of race, for example, if you look in the literature, you see studies that define it rather simplistically, just in terms of that closed-ended, variable, and treat it as an independent variable. Many people, myself including, have sort of argued against that approach. It doesn't really recognize the fact that race, it's a socially, invented construct. It's not really biological, and it also doesn't recognize issues of like power and inequity that I think the researchers who really do focus on issues of race and racial socialization, racial identity often talk about. Growing community of scholars who are looking at that, but not as much yet. So, what we're seeing is that, sometimes we find differences. We don't really know why there's differences, so, I think more work needs to be done there. And I'm doing it with Revati Kumar, and we're currently working on a manuscript that kind of looks at the intersection between the research on motivation and the broader multicultural literature on like culturally responsive pedagogy, relevant pedagogy, and responsive teaching. So what we're finding is that there are a lot of points of intersection. If you look at a lot of the assumptions about learning, both the motivation literature as well as the multicultural literature all assume that learning should be validating, it should be empowering, it should be students should feel a sense of confidence that learning should take place in a caring community. So from that perspective, Revati and I are talking about in our paper that both literatures recognize the important role of autonomy, belonging, competence, and relatedness, or did I say that? A meaningfulness rather on learning. But we're also, if you like delve a little bit deeper into the literature, there seems to be a slight difference in focus. The multicultural literature, first of all, starts with the assumption that all learning is cultural. And in particular, when they say that, they're emphasizing issues of inequity and power and cultural hegemony and institutional racism and all the stuff that I don't necessarily always see talked about in sort of the mainstream research on achievement motivation. So that's one main difference. And because they start there, the way they talk about autonomy or competence or meaningfulness is slightly different. They also talk about, given that, in terms of autonomy, well, both literatures really want students to feel empowered and to take ownership of their learning. But the culturally responsive folks would say, well, what does that mean? How do you take ownership of learning that really isn't relevant for you? So oftentimes what we see in the discussions there is issues of cultural competence and developing a cultural identity, and how those things are really important and lead to actually academic competence. Things like cultural costs. If we are talking about similar things, but to just put a slight spin on it a little bit more and emphasize the cultural part, I think we could sort of bring the two literatures even closer together.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. And until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.